I enjoyed every last bit of this episode with the perfect mixture of delivering an incredible story, make it go forward, huge references to old movies, and of course outstanding external references that make us really happy. So let's talk about this amazing episode. So don't forget to leave a like, don't forget to subscribe, and let's go with this review. Well, this was no surprise that I was right that they were going after the Mandalorians in this episode. Well, were once led by Bo-Katan. But to be honest, they are really better now than they were before, because now they have a huge ass ship that I'm not sure it looks like the ship that Moff Gideon had when he was with the Empire, but it might be another Imperial ship. And of course, they have a lot of other Mandalorian ships just like the one that she has, but they have like tens of them. And to be honest, I don't think this is a bad idea for them to actually work as bounty hunters as they are doing right now, because I think after the collapse of their people, the only way I think they managed to survive was doing these jobs because of how capable they were, of how many people they could bring down and having one-on-one battles against X, Wolves, and Bo-Katan proved that they were a very capable race. After defeating him, she claimed herself as the leader, but of course, again, he reminded her that she doesn't even have the Darksaber lead them, because it is almost like the crown that for the people. I think Mando saw the picture and understood what he wanted to do. He's not a jealous guy or anything at this moment. He just wanted to do things that is the safety of Grogu and the comeback of the Mandalorian people reclaiming Mandalore. So he, by the logic, he doesn't just give the Darksaber to her because he cannot do it, because they need to armor combat, and he gave a clear explanation because he lost it in a battle to that crabby robot thing that appeared in the second episode, and after she relieved him from captivity, she defeated him. So she actually was the person that was deserved to have the leadership and the Darksaber. So he wasn't even caring about that in the moment, but it was a very reasonable explanation. Not only that, after she defeating X, the people believed in her. We see more in the next episode, the clash of ideologies that these new Mandalorians will have with the old-headed people, but they're given more firepower by them. So of course, and shifts, they don't have this, and it will be important to reclaim Mandalore, of course. And I don't want to see this, and we might see this army together probably in the last episode, and probably will be the best thing that ever happened in Star Wars in the last 20 years. But of course, before that happened, we needed to have the most famous thing for Mandalorian, which is they needed to solve a problem to move forward, and to do that need to first find this Mandalorians in that planet. So they followed them, where they actually had a jump scare when I was presented to the rulers of the planet, because one of them was actually Jack Black, and after that I was already seeing that episode with a very different eye, and I was already stunned. Together with was also Lizzo, which was also kind of shocking, but we saw Megan Thee Stallion in She-Hulk, so this is not the craziest thing I've ever saw. And Jack was actually a great actor in this part. He was a reformed guy for the Republic who was worked once with the Empire and offered as a job to rule this independent planet and work his way up, and kept this almost dystopian planet that we didn't see so much in the galaxy, which were planets that also had huge work dependent for robots, and they had a different vision that I think that most people had, because I'm always on point on reading about technology and what societies can be in the future, and understanding that this episode was very good on proposing that in terms of having, for example, a society in the future where people don't have to work and the robots will just do the work for themselves, so they can dedicate themselves to do more leisure, dedicate themselves to democracy. They use a lot of Isaac Asimov ideas on this episode, which is great, and then got those real life aspects as well brought into the episode, and it fitted like a glove. It was perfect. And the problem that they were having was because they were using all droids that were part of the Clone Wars, that you remember, the B1 droids that were just the regular battling droids, or the B2s, which were those ones that were silver painted and were bigger. This already gave me chills, because I remember playing, for example, Lego Star Wars for a long time, and then seeing in theaters Star Wars 1, 2, and 3, and remembered all of that. I remember all my childhood was just so amazing seeing all of that. And of course, I cannot forget about the also amazing reference about the Ugnaughts, that Bo-Katan was having a problem communicating with them. But of course, we know that Mando lived with Q, who was an Ugnaught, and was used with the mannerisms of speaking, and it was so nice to see and remember that amazing character that we saw in the first season, one of my favorite characters, and unfortunately died, one of the most heartbreaking deaths of the show. And they have a problem because they were using the robots as labor, but of course they were giving problems because they were going back to their own old functions of war droids. And again, this brought another discussion back with Mando, because you know that during all of those seasons he hates droids, who he also has this thinking like the droids are conscious, they have personalities, but we know that in our world the droids are basically machines that are programmed to do certain tasks, but as artificial intelligence developed, they become more conscious and more intelligent, so the probability of some of them making something bad is huge. We even see that as a reference throughout part with their interrogation with one of the droids. Those B2 droids were carrying heavy loads of things to a ship, and Mando was just kinking them to provoke them to see if they could react and stop their original programming and become harmful. And it's just a reference to some tests that, for example, we had seen from Boston Dynamics doing in robots, a company of Google developing robots that have also almost the same build as those B2 droids, and they were testing their balances, they kicking them, and at the time people were reacting crazy like he's gonna react and kill all of them, but he actually ran away and tried to harm people in the show. These droids also have these great personalities, as of course they also interact themselves in bars throughout the whole city, and they have some fear that we have to do, which are, we have this fear nowadays that with artificial intelligence becoming so more intelligent and developing so much that they're gonna lose several jobs throughout that process. And in this episode they show this fear directed to the droids, because people are so droid dependent, androids are making all of these bad behaviors as well, and if they continue to do that, people are just gonna go backwards and start working as they were doing past. It also remember about Dune, for example, which was associated for example in the story they banned computers and things like this, so they use the spices to have the supernatural powers to do calculation and things like this to travel through space, and it was a good reference for me, I think. And we saw that someone was given a specific nanobot in the liquid that they were drinking from these bars, deteriorating that program and making them go back to the original program, which was killing. And the person who was doing that was the chief of security of the planet. And you don't know how happy I am that I saw who was the actor who was actually doing that. And to be honest, I'm not the hugest guy on Back to the Future, even though I've watched the first and second one, but it was a long time ago. I was a kid, and it's a little bit dated, but I think it is important to see to understand how science fiction and futuristic forecast was masterfully done in the past. It was actually Christopher Lloyd who was the chief, and he was so genuine. He's of course way older, and this was probably the greatest actor that Star Wars could possibly bring as a reference, because he's just such a unique personality of science fiction. His role on this science works is just unmatched, because what he did back on Back to the Future, bringing him to this greatest science fiction franchises of all time after 40 years, it is something to be accounted for. And it was also amazing to see him, that he was acting super good, and he also of course was a reference and to something that happened for Star Wars, because he was a separatist. If you guys remember, the separatists was the institution that the Republic was fighting against in the Clone Wars, but it was the institution that behind of that the Empire was hiding behind it, so they could overcome the Republic in the near future. And he was a separatist himself, so he had the programming also that he would make all the robots also go back to the original programming. And this episode was just astonishing, and after Saul, who directed, was searching, because it was Bryce Dallas Howard. She's just an outstanding actress, but more than that, she's a fantastic director. Her dad also directed some projects, one of them being Solo, which has some bad parts, but some good parts as well, in my opinion. I think she got the best aspects from her dad, because she's just such a unique director, not only actress. And in this project just make me wonder, like, maybe she could receive a bigger project, like a movie, maybe a trilogy. I'm certain that she can do it, and the show is coming on to a conclusion. And we're having some problems, of course, in the internet, people claiming that this series doesn't go forward. But if you look in the past and see how the story is developing, I think it is amazing. And maybe, for example, in the 4th season, I don't know, they can stop doing some things and just start developing the story more. I think the story develops very well in this season. I think you just need to check it up and see it. And I hope that, for me, one of the bad things for this season is they're not giving they gave very importance to Grogu some episodes ago, but I think they could do a little bit more. I want to see more of him, even though he's a baby. To see the backstories of him in the other episodes, I think it's great for us to do these things. So there are, I think, 3 episodes left or 2 episodes left, so I don't know actually what to expect for them, because probably in the last episode for the next episode, they'll probably bring those Mandalorians back to Navarro, where all those Mandalorians are sighted. Maybe they'll have some interaction also but there's a lot of things to do, like for example discover what the Empire was doing in Mandalore, see if they are already going to Mandalore now. I'm not certain, but I think the Empire is gonna do something about it, and of course we might have some backstories more of Grogu, but I have a feeling that in the last episode we're gonna receive something like this. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys on the next video. So goodbye and peace.